This whole thing started because I was bored. Seriously, summer break was dragging and I was stuck at my parents' place in suburban Ohio. My college friends were either traveling or actually being productive, and I was just cycling through Netflix and Reddit. It was a late Thursday night, around 11 p.m., and I made the dumb decision to open Omegle. I wasn't looking for trouble. I always kept my webcam covered, showing a static picture of a cartoon dog. Lame, but it kept the really creepy people away, mostly. I just wanted a quick, weird chat before going to bed. I hit start a chat, and the connection was instant. The other person's camera was on. It was a man, probably in his mid-30s, with a rough, unshaven face and a perpetually tired look. He was wearing a dark, cheap, oversized gray hoodie. The background was the first thing that set my nerves on edge. A raw, unfinished space. Think concrete floor, cinder block walls, and the only light coming from a single flickering fluorescent bulb hanging overhead. It looked like a rented storage unit or maybe a severely neglected basement laundry room. He didn't greet me or try to talk. He just stared into the lens. His eyes were wide and strangely frantic, even though the rest of his face was dead tired. I tried to break the ice. "Hey, long day?" I typed. The chat window showed, "Stranger is typing." His response appeared, "You have no idea." Okay, too heavy. I was already moving my mouse to the next button to disconnect. I didn't need this kind of existential dread before sleep. But just as I was about to click, he moved. He leaned sharply toward his camera, his face suddenly filling my screen. He whispered, the sound thin and metallic over the microphone, "Don't go." Then his eyes darted quickly to his right, and the entire expression of fatigue was replaced by sheer panic. He reacted to something off camera. The video feed tilted violently. Now all I could see was the dusty, poorly lit ceiling. I heard a muffled grunt, a scrambling noise, and then a sickeningly heavy thud, like a sack of bricks hitting concrete. My heart immediately started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't a joke. This felt real. The camera view settled, now pointing back toward the floor. I couldn't see the man's face, only the bottom half of his dark jeans. But there it was, a flash of something intensely red spreading quickly near his left shoe, staining the dark fabric. It was unmistakable. Blood. A horrible, wet, choked gurgle came through my speakers, followed by a faint, desperate whimper that cut off instantly, swallowed by the silence. Then, just the man's heavy, uneven breathing and the frantic sound of something metallic scraping the floor. He was struggling, or maybe covering up. I was locked in place, paralyzed. My fingers were hovering inches from the stop button, but a terrible morbid compulsion kept me from hitting it. If I hung up, it would just be a bad dream. If I stayed, maybe I could get some evidence. Shaking, I typed, "What was that noise? Is everything okay over there?" No reply in the text box. He wasn't typing. The man slowly, agonizingly slowly shuffled back into the center of the frame. He was facing away from the camera, staring down at the floor, breathing in rattling gasps. He raised his right arm. In his hand was a hammer, a standard framing hammer, but it looked heavy and terribly dark. He took one final ragged breath, then slowly lifted his eyes to meet the webcam lens. There was no emotion left in his face, just a blank, terrifying calm. He spoke, his voice low, measured, and absolutely dead. "You shouldn't have seen that." The sound of his voice speaking directly to me was what broke the spell. It was a threat, a realization that the last person he saw was mine. I screamed, slammed the laptop shut, and threw it on my bed. My body was shaking uncontrollably with adrenaline and nausea. After a few minutes of dry heaving and panic breaths, the rational thought broke through. You have to call the police. This was real. I grabbed my cell phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed 911. 911? What's your emergency? I stammered out the story, struggling to make the unbelievable sound credible. I was on a random video chat, Omegle. I think I just saw a murder happen. There was blood, a hammer, and the guy saw me before I hung up. The dispatcher's voice was calm but professional. Sir, we need a location. This is an anonymous service. Do you have a name, a city, anything? No, but wait, I saw a clue. When he leaned in, I saw a faded sticker taped to a workbench in the background. It was a local HVAC company. The logo said Cincy Reds HVAC. That was it. Cincinnati, Ohio. It was the only tangible piece of information I had. I spent the next 2 hours talking to detectives, trying to explain the technology, sending the few grainy screenshots I had taken earlier in the chat. They kept telling me how difficult it would be to get a warrant based on an anonymous IP trace, which only narrows the location down to a massive apartment block or a general neighborhood. I haven't had a proper night's sleep since. I check the local Cincinnati news every hour. I jump at every unexpected car door slam outside. The police called the next morning and confirmed they traced the IP to a large, older complex outside the city, and they would conduct welfare checks. That was weeks ago. There are no news reports about a missing person or a body found. The silence is deafening. He knows the face of the last person who saw him, and I know his. I'm convinced he wasn't just talking to the air when he whispered, "You shouldn't have seen that." I'm waiting for him to finish the conversation.
It started like any other Tuesday in October. I was bored out of my mind, scrolling through my phone, avoiding the essay due Friday. My roommate Sarah was at her boyfriend's place, so I had our dorm room to myself. That's when I remembered Omegle. I hadn't used it since high school, back when it was kind of funny to see random strangers and skip through the creeps. Now, at 21, I figured it might kill some time. Maybe I'd meet someone interesting. Maybe I'd just laugh at the weirdness of it all. The first few chats were exactly what you'd expect. A guy who disconnected the second he saw I wasn't going to take my clothes off. A kid who looked about 12 asking if I played Fortnite. An empty room with heavy breathing. Skip, skip, skip. Then I connected with him. The video showed a normal-looking guy in his 30s, sitting in what looked like a home office. Bookshelves behind him, desk lamp casting warm light. He wore a blue button-down shirt and had neatly combed brown hair. He smiled when he saw me. Finally, someone normal, I thought. We started chatting. He introduced himself as David, said he was a high school teacher in Ohio. He asked where I went to school. I told him I was at college in Massachusetts, but didn't say which one. My internet safety instincts weren't completely dead. David seemed genuinely nice. He talked about his students, how hard it was teaching history to kids who'd rather be on their phones. He made me laugh. We talked about movies, books, the weather, completely mundane stuff. It felt refreshing after all the weirdness. About 15 minutes in, he asked what dorm building I lived in. I felt a small flutter in my stomach. I hadn't mentioned I lived in a dorm. I just said I was in college. But maybe I had mentioned it and forgotten? The conversation had been flowing pretty naturally. I laughed it off and changed the subject. But David brought it up again. He asked if I lived on the north or south side of campus. My mouth dried. I definitely hadn't mentioned which part of campus I was on. I hadn't even told him which school. When I didn't answer, his smile didn't waver, not even a little. It stayed frozen on his face like a mask. That's when I noticed his video feed looked odd. The lighting hadn't changed once. He hadn't moved much either. Same position, same smile, same angle. I shifted in my seat, leaned closer to my screen. Behind him, the books on his shelves looked blurry. Not out of focus blurry, wrong blurry. Like a photoshopped background that someone didn't quite get right. My heart started pounding. Is this a recording? I waved at my camera. David's smile didn't change. He just kept talking, asking me if I felt safe living alone, asking if Sarah was my roommate's real name or a nickname. I never mentioned Sarah. My hands shook as I reached for the mouse to disconnect, but before I could click, David's face filled the screen. He'd moved closer to his camera. That frozen smile stretched wider. His voice came through my speakers, but his lips didn't move quite right with the words, like a badly dubbed movie. He said my full name, first and last. Then he said my address, my actual dorm building, the room number. I slammed my laptop shut hard enough I heard the plastic crack. I sat there in the dark, shaking, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow. This had to be some kind of prank. Maybe Sarah put someone up to this. But Sarah didn't know I was on Omegle, and she definitely wouldn't joke like that. I called Sarah, but she was already ringing. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang 6 times, then stopped. Immediately started ringing again. I turned my phone off. That's when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Slow, deliberate. They stopped right outside my room. I waited for a knock, for something, but there was just silence. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark before I heard the footsteps walk away. It felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. When I finally worked up the courage to open my laptop again, I found 17 emails from addresses I didn't recognize, all sent in the last 20 minutes. No subject lines. I didn't open any of them. I also had a friend request on every social media platform I used. Same profile picture on each one. A blurry photo of my dorm building taken from the parking lot. I called campus security. They sent an officer to check my floor. Nothing unusual, they said. No one saw anyone who didn't belong. They suggested I had maybe fallen asleep and had a nightmare. But I know I was awake. I know what I saw. I eventually called Sarah, and she came back. I made her stay with me. I didn't tell her everything. I just said I'd had a scare with someone online. She understood without asking questions. That was 3 weeks ago. I still get emails. Not every day, but often enough. Still the same addresses I don't recognize. I've blocked them all, but new ones keep appearing. The subject lines are getting more specific. Yesterday one said, "The blue sweater looks nice on you." I was wearing a blue sweater yesterday. I filed a police report, but what can they really do? Some guy on Omegle knew my name? Could have been a lucky guess, they said. Could have found it on social media. The emails could be spam. The footsteps could have been any student on my floor. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being paranoid. But I don't think so. Because this morning, I found something slipped under my door. A printed screenshot from our video chat. Just me on the screen sitting at my desk, looking at my laptop. And in the window behind me, barely visible in the darkness outside, there's a figure. Someone was watching me through my window that night. Someone was standing 3 floors up on a fire escape I didn't even know was there. I'm transferring schools next semester. Mom doesn't know why yet, but she will. And I'll never use Omegle again.